Your phone buzzes. Before you even read the whole message, your thumb is already typing the word yes. You haven't checked your schedule. You haven't asked yourself if you want to. The answer left your body before your brain finished the question. This happens to you more than you think. Not once a week, multiple times a day. And here's what almost nobody tells you about it. Every one of those yeses is quietly rewriting who you believe you are. So what actually happens if you stop? Not forever, just 30 days. What if for 1 month, every automatic yes had to earn its place? Most people assume this would make them a worse friend, a worse coworker, a worse person to know. That saying no even once, even carefully, turns you into someone difficult, someone selfish, someone people quietly stop inviting. That assumption feels true. It does not hold up. Start with what's actually happening in your brain in that split second before you agree. Psychologist Robert Cialdini spent decades studying why people comply with requests they don't actually want to fulfill. One of his core findings is called the consistency principle. Once you've said yes to something small, your brain fights to stay consistent with that yes, even when the cost quietly grows. Not because it's smart, because inconsistency feels to your nervous system like a threat to your identity. Translate that into your actual week. You agree to just quickly help a coworker with something. Then it becomes a weekly favor. Then it becomes expected. You never consciously chose any of that. Your brain just kept protecting the first yes. That's the small version. Here's the bigger one. Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments in the 1960s are usually taught as a story about authority. Ordinary people told to administer what they believed were increasingly painful electric shocks to another person, and a majority of them kept going. Not because they wanted to hurt anyone, because a person in a position of mild social authority kept asking, and stopping felt more uncomfortable than continuing. Strip away the shock generator and the lab coat. What's left is something you recognize instantly. The discomfort of disappointing someone in front of you is often stronger than your discomfort with the thing you're actually agreeing to do. That's not a character flaw. That's a documented, measurable feature of how your brain weighs social risk. And it means the yes you gave this morning may have had almost nothing to do with what was being asked. Here's where it gets worse. Psychologist Roy Baumeister's research on ego depletion found that willpower behaves like a limited resource. Every decision you make in a day, including the small social ones, draws from the same shrinking pool. Saying no requires a deliberate override of your automatic compliance response. That override costs energy. By the afternoon, that energy is already spent on 100 smaller decisions you don't even remember making. So by 4 p.m., when someone asks you for just one more thing, you're not actually choosing anymore. You're just out of the fuel required to choose. You say yes not because you want to, but because your brain has nothing left to fight it with. Picture the moment this usually happens to you. You're standing in a hallway laptop bag, digging into your shoulder. Someone catches you between two meetings and asks if you can just quickly take on one more thing before Friday. You feel your jaw tighten for half a second. You say yes anyway before the sentence is even finished because stopping to actually think about it feels harder than agreeing. That's not politeness. That's depletion wearing politeness as a disguise. There's a financial version of this same reflex too, and it might be the most expensive one you never noticed. Behavioral economist Richard Thaler spent years studying why people make decisions that work against their own stated goals, even when they know better in the moment. One pattern he documented again and again is that people say yes to small financial asks, a group gift, a last-minute dinner, split a subscription. A friend swears you'll use for the exact same reason they say yes to a coworker's favor. not because they weighed the cost, because refusing felt like a bigger, more immediate cost than the money itself. Add those up over a year, and the number stops being small. It's not one yes, it's 50 of them, each one invisible on its own, each one drawn from the same depleted reflexive part of your brain that agreed to the extra work project and the extra favor and the extra hour. Picture that version of the moment too. You're standing at a register or thumbing through a payment app. Someone next to you says, just Venmo me your part. And you do it before you've actually looked at the number. Your card is already out. The decision was never really made. It was just executed. Now here's the twist almost nobody expects, because it inverts everything you were taught about kindness. You've probably been told that saying yes more makes you more likable, more valued, more trusted. That's the wrong assumption sitting underneath almost every automatic yes you give. But research on likability and generosity, including work building on Cialdini's principles, shows something closer to the opposite. People don't actually respect the person who agrees to everything. They respect the person whose yes means something because it was chosen, not extracted. A yes with no filter isn't generous, it's cheap. And on some level, everyone around you knows it, even if they never say it out loud. So what happens in the 30 days where you actually stop? The first week is the hardest, and it's not because saying no is hard. It's because the silence after you say it feels unbearable. Your brain trained on years of instant compliance treats, that half-second pause like an alarm. You'll feel the urge to soften it, to over-explain, to apologize for a boundary you haven't even finished stating. By the second week, something shifts. The requests that used to arrive by default start arriving with more thought behind them. People start asking instead of assuming, not because they respect you less, because your yes has started to mean something again, and their brain, running the same consistency principle as yours, recalibrates around that. You'll also notice something you weren't expecting. The requests that were never actually about you, the ones riding on your reflex instead of your genuine willingness, start disappearing entirely. Nobody chases a no that was calm and clear. They only chase the yes they suspect you'll eventually cave and give. By the third week, the pause itself starts to change shape. Where it once felt like an alarm, it starts to feel closer to a held breath before speaking deliberate instead of panicked. You notice the exact weight of your phone in your hand. In that half second, the small resistance of your thumb hovering instead of moving. That tiny delay is the entire experiment. Everything else is just what happens once you protect it. By day 30, the strange part isn't that you've said no more often. It's that you've said yes less often, but with your whole body behind it instead of your thumb moving before your brain caught up. The math even works out in your favor. Fewer commitments, but every single one of them chosen instead of extracted, which means less resentment, quietly building underneath the favors you never wanted to do in the first place. There's also a quieter shift nobody warns you about going in. The version of you that used to feel guilty for even considering a no starts to go quiet too. Not because you stopped caring about people, because you finally separated caring about someone from being unable to disappoint them, which were never actually the same thing, no matter how long your brain had been treating them that way. This is the part that actually mirrors your life right now today without any 30-day experiment at all. Every time you agree to something out of reflex instead of choice, you're not being kind. You're outsourcing a decision that belongs to you to whoever asked the question first and asked it most recently. The people who seem effortlessly respected aren't the ones who agree to everything. They're the ones whose agreement was never available on autopilot in the first place. Think about the last person whose no genuinely surprised you. Chances are you didn't respect them less for it. You probably paused, recalibrated, and asked yourself whether your request had actually been fair to begin with. That's the exact reaction Cialdini's consistency research predicts, and it's the reaction almost nobody extends to themselves. You'll question a stranger's boundary and adjust instantly. You'll override your own boundary and call it being easygoing. That gap is worth sitting with. It's not a small oversight. It's the entire mechanism keeping your calendar, your energy, and sometimes your bank account running on decisions you never actually made. So the next time your phone buzzes and your thumb starts moving before you've even finished reading the message notice that half second, that's not a bad habit. That's decades of social conditioning making a decision for you before you were even in the room. Let it wait one more second, not forever, just long enough for the yes to actually be yours.